Hello, everyone. I'm just letting everybody in before we start. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Shane LaTouche. I am the Executive Director of the Toronto Black Media Association, and I'll hand it over to Alicia.
Yeah, my name is Alicia Petrusa. I am the Director of Finance for the Toronto Black Media Association. And thank you all so much for joining us for today's panel. So the topic of discussion for today is getting in, getting that foot in the door of the media industry. We have a great panel of, a wide variety of media artists. So today we have with us Zaki Farow, who's a writer producer, Keysha Freshh, a hip hop artist and entrepreneur, Michael Fayehun, a photographer at F10 Studios, Josiane Blanc, a director and producer, and Tracey Lloyd, who's the director of career services at Centennial College.
Well, it looks like we lost Michael. I'll send him a message so we could jump back in. But we can start. For now. So our first question is, and this is a general question for everyone. So how did you get your first opportunity, and were there any difficulties in finding a job in your field? So maybe we could start with, I see Zaki kind of looking around. Let's start with Zaki.
All right. Yeah, so one of the difficulties I had at the very beginning was finding a paid position in the entry level. There were a lot of, so I'm in film and television, and one of the ways in is as a production assistant. And I found that people wanted experience to give you your first experience. So I had to volunteer. I did a few like commercials. I worked for like a Ryerson short film, like a student short film. And then one of the best ones was the CFC. So I volunteered as a production assistant for the Canadian Film Center. And through that, I made some contacts. I met some people, like I got a mentor through that. And then they put my name towards a production assistant role. And then from there, I got my actual first role, which was health and safety during the beginning of the pandemic. So, which is how I met Shane. And yeah, that was probably the hardest part, was finding people who wanted to give you your first chance. Yeah, and it takes unfortunately, a lot of volunteering in my experience to get a resume that lets people want to hire you for paid experiences.
Yeah, and I guess Josiane, we'll go to you, as you're also in the film and television industry. What's your story in regards to your first opportunity?
I mean, for me, it was more of I did an internship after my studies. So I interned as the assistant of the first AD on a documentary series. And then from there, they hired me to do more work when I finished. So that was kind of my first opportunity. Though after that, I didn't get a lot of opportunities after that in terms of trying to find work in the film. After I volunteered as well, I worked on projects for free as well, and kind of trying to create those connections and get all those opportunities through those connections. And then my first job was in the network more than on the production side. So I worked as a researcher for TFO, which is the French TVO in Toronto. And that's kind of how I started working. And through that, I got opportunities within the broadcast on the associate producer side and directing side, et cetera, et cetera. And then I became independent. That's kind of the path that I took.
Great, thank you. Keysha, we'd love to hear your story.
Oh man, as an artist, I've been performing for about 24 years. So just as a kid, having a mom and who just, she just wanted to get me involved. She saw my personality and knew that I liked performing and kind of being the center of attention. I'm the only daughter and I'm the youngest. So obviously I love the attention. So, you know, she just was getting me on stages and stuff like that at a very, very young age. And I never kind of stopped. And, you know, just professionally, you know, I was always like, again, as being a kid, I was paid to perform, you know, so it's just having a mom who just, you know, had connections and wanted to get me involved. The difficulty in kind of as an adult and, you know, in the music industry and transitioning, being an MC is kind of, you know, I think it's just the Canadian industry does not have a proper infrastructure for hip hop music, R&B music. There's no real infrastructure that provides us paid opportunities as like our counterparts. So we can see an American act go on tour and, you know, make millions of dollars just touring, you know, 51 states. Here, we don't really have that infrastructure. So it's just a little difficult to transition now and kind of do that now, but it takes a lot of groundwork and, you know, and savviness. So I just been kind of flexing that and using that to work in my benefit.
And I guess we'll jump to Michael next. So Michael, how did you get your first opportunity, and were there any difficulties?
Right. My first couple opportunities came from within my current network of friends and family. And I think just like pretty much anything else you get into, you always have to start from home. So I remember my first wedding was for someone that was in the same church as myself. And even my first commercial opportunity was from someone that I knew from somewhere. So that was how I got my start. It was pretty much friends and family. And in terms of difficulties, I think you know, when you start something, you're always not the best, right? You're always like, you know, there's always that, you know, growth that comes with just doing anything, especially being a creative, right? So, and I think the difficulty was about not having that body of work, which obviously it would be always at a disadvantage compared to someone who's been doing for a long time. And but as things got better, like my photos and the videos that we created got better, then we were able to get the major difficulties I think we faced in the beginning.
And what about you, Tracey?
Well, I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm not here as, you know, a member of the arts community, here in my capacity as you know, having spent a long time in the career and work field. So, and I would say that I just kind of landed in my job based on a number of experiences led me to career and work. But one of the things that made it fit for me and why I stayed in the field was that I, you know, followed my heart and figured out what mattered to me and how I wanted to contribute. And so the field really, it fit. In terms of getting that first opportunity, and I've been working for, you know, a couple of decades now, and it, you know, it seems as if it's the same things apply, your network. You know, I think I spoke to a lot of people, came here as a student, you know, from Jamaica, didn't know many people. So I just got out there and, you know, they really depended on a network that I tried to cultivate along the way. So I would say, you know, the breadth and the depth of your network is so important to land that first opportunity. And love what you said, Michael. It really starts at home. You know, you start with those communities that you're part of, and then you branch out from there.
Perfect, thank you. So we're just gonna go to you, Zaki, first. So as a Black person with experience in film and TV, what suggestions would you have for young Black creatives?
So when I first began, film and TV was kind of just a pipe dream. You know, I'd been working random jobs in my 20s, and I always came back to wanting to work in film and TV. And when I first got onto set, I didn't realize all the different positions that were involved in this. I walked in wanting to be a writer, but by being on set, I walked out as somebody now who writes, produces, and directs. So I think a piece of advice I can give is just be observant, like look around what all the other positions are doing, understand all the roles that that everyone else does, and just understand how they communicate to each other. Like if you're if you want to be a writer, understanding production is extremely helpful. There are a lot of writers who don't really get a chance to go to set. So if you have that opportunity, like that's extremely vital. So I would say like, yeah, I'd say that would be my biggest suggestion is just absorb everything. It's a lot, but just keep absorbing everything as much as you can. Yeah.
Thank you, Zaki. I think it's great that you mentioned like to keep absorbing things, because I think that was one of the things that we did. We actually worked together on Lock and Key, and I know like I was constantly taking mental notes about like what everybody else was doing and how to do it, especially in that kind of starting position. So yeah, that's good advice. So I guess we'll jump to you, Josiane, about because you're in film as well. So what other avenues have you found to be successful in terms of accessing funding for your projects? And have you ever experienced any kind of barriers when it comes to financing as a Black filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, I think that financing is always the biggest challenge. I think it applies to everybody. I think that finding the money is, anyways, that's what's difficult. I think for me it's what's I've been working really well for me. It's really being aware of every opportunities. I think since the day I started in film, it was always about knowing every opportunities to pitch in festivals, every opportunities to apply for funding, whether it's for a short film or a documentary. I received the newsletters from all those associations. I apply for everything that obviously relates to what I want to do, but I think that helped me a lot because I think that there's different avenues sometimes. Sometimes festivals have screenwriters contests or pitching opportunities especially for emerging when you're just starting, and knowing these opportunities helps a lot because that's when somebody was mentioning, creating those connection and getting a bigger network, and the access to funding often goes through that process of having a network. I mean, you obviously have the arts councils where you can apply to and get funding, but sometimes it is challenging because there's a lot of competition, and out of 500 or 600 or 700 projects, they're maybe going to fund like 10 or 15 or 20 projects. But I think that, I think that creating those connections sometimes even with broadcasters or asking questions have been very helpful as well. I know that when you want to submit to, from my experience at least, when I wanted to submit to Canadian Arts Council or Ontario Arts Council, they're always open to answer any questions you might have. So, or linking with people who've been through that process and been successful has been something successful for me as well. In terms of, challenges, specifically as a Black filmmaker, like it would be hard for me to say, oh, it's specifically about that for sure. But I think that, a lot of, when you go to the bigger, when you try to create bigger projects or like that involves broadcasting and broadcasters, I think that, a lot of more experienced producers or directors have a long time relationship with those peoples. And when you're first arriving on the table, this is a challenge because they don't know you yet. So creating those relations or having access to those people specifically as an emerging creators, definitely there's a challenge there to get to create your first bigger project that comes with revenues, that is just not just one short films, because if you want to make a career out of it as a director, you need to create bigger projects for it to be sustainable. So I would say that this has been more of the challenges, creating those connections, being at the places where the bigger players are, which are bigger festival where access is sometimes difficult because of just the access is expensive, like the band festival or stuff like that. Even though in the past few years we've been seeing access opportunities for specifically creators of colors, Banff has diversity of voices, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I think that these are the good opportunities to actually access funding, is to talk to create the connections and get a network of people.
Absolutely. I even from my experience in funding applications, it never hurts to reach out to the funding agencies themselves, speak directly with the people at those agencies, build that relationship with them so that when your application comes in, they recognize your name, they recognize your project, and they can also really help, excuse me, really help you strengthen the application too. Sometimes they give you some really invaluable tips. So yeah, thank you, Josiane. That's really insightful. So the next question goes out to anyone who's interested in answering. What do you think needs to change for more Black people to get into media industries? Who'd like to go? Maybe Michael, for photography, what do you think would need to change for that?
I think there's two sides to this, right? You can be as good as you want. If the other person on the other side doesn't want to give you the opportunity, there's nothing you can do, right? But at the same time, you can't control that, right? So, but on your own part, the best thing you can do is to try to be the best at anything that it is that you're doing, and it's going to take time. And at the same time, we have to always be honest and self-critical of our work, and just make sure that, okay, we're on par with those top guys that are out there. But that's about what you can do. Networking is great, which has given, I think has given me the biggest opportunities that I have. And in terms of networking, I think a lot of people try to go into networking with people with the idea of trying to get something from them, right? So the best approach is always to just try to connect with someone, be friends, and not even thinking about, okay, what do I have to gain from this, right? Because sometimes you don't even know what opportunities might come. So yeah, so networking is great as well. So I think those will be my two main points, which is obviously have the best work possible, and having a great network of people that could potentially help, whenever there is an opportunities for whatever it is that you're doing.
Tracey, actually, I'm curious to hear from your perspective in career services and seeing emerging Black artists and trying to help guide them into their careers. Like, have you noticed any specific barriers that need to be addressed?
I think overall, and this applies to other industries as well, I think representation is key, right? We need to see more people from diverse communities in those decision-making roles, right? The roles that will actually are responsible for hiring. From a post-secondary standpoint, something that we try to do as a college, and I think it's very important because colleges have a role. We need to make sure that young people are even aware of the possibilities. So really, certainly improving initiatives where more people from diverse communities, from the Black communities, have access to the education, the training that they need to enter these different fields. Internships, I heard, internships, unfortunately, I'm not a fan of unpaid internships, but I realize that, in certain industries that seems to, be a way of getting your foot in the door. But these internships, work integrated learning opportunities, projects that students can actually participate in are wonderful. But I think as a post-secondary institution, what we need to do is find opportunities, link students to these internship opportunities, but also link them to people working in the field who can provide that mentorship and sponsorship and support for them. So in creating these internship opportunities, what I'm essentially saying too is finding those people in the community who are able to, who reflect the diversity in the institutions and who are able to sponsor and mentor. And I mean, I prefer that idea of sponsorship because you're invested in the person's success, not just giving advice. So again, that I think is like a key role. So representation in the organizations, but certainly colleges and universities have a role to improve access for students from diverse communities, including the Black communities, and also link students to those role models and those professionals in the field.
Thank you, Tracey. I'm actually so glad that you mentioned the importance of internships because I actually got my start in interning as well. I actually interned for a dancehall artist, Mr. Vegas, and that opportunity actually like snowballed into so many other opportunities for me. I had no idea where that was even gonna go, but it's really important. I mean, nobody likes unpaid internships, but it was very valuable for me. I will say that. So thank you for mentioning that. So I guess another question that I'm going to pose to everybody is about networking, because most of you have actually mentioned the importance of networking. So how should we be networking to accomplish our goals in terms of our careers?
One
I
of
think,
my, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
One of my, this is always an important conversation for me when I teach or I give lectures, is the importance of networking coupled with bartering. When we talk about networking in the music industry, it's probably one of your most, if not your most valuable asset. You know, the talent is always, you know, supposed to be there, but as far as getting ahead in the music industry, it's always the motto of who you know, not what you know. And a lot of people in Toronto they try to network vertically, but networking across, you know, networking at people at your level, networking with peers and stuff like that, I find is always the best practice in a city like ours that is still building a music industry. Because when you network across, I believe you can really find like-minded people who are at the same level and you guys can pull your resources to build together. So I just feel in the music industry, like I said, networking is an extremely important thing. As far as the success of what the project, whatever you're trying to do goes. There's always somebody who knows a little bit more than you. There's always somebody who is a little more connected than you. And I think a lot of artists don't really value or understand how important it is to shake hands with people and rub shoulders. There's shows and stuff that happen a lot in the city, and you don't see some people there, but they're always the ones online complaining that, you know, their music isn't being heard. And, you know, just having a conversation with Solitaire just yesterday or the day before, he was explaining that, you know, like there's some artists who you see doing the groundwork for years before they put out a song. So when you do put out a song, you have the support from the people that you've been networking with. So I think it's extremely valuable and important, especially in the music industry.
And Josiane, I think you were gonna say something earlier as well.
Yeah, I think that the same thing applies for the film industry in my sense. I think that most of the opportunities personally I have right now, I think 95% of them comes from people I met at some point, and then sometimes, and they're not necessarily, you know, they're not necessarily people that are quote unquote above me or more experienced. It's often other filmmakers that I met when we were first starting, and then they have an opportunity and they think about me, or I'll do the same. So it's building that network is also super important. The other thing that I would say is that one of the things that I see often people do is go through networking opportunities or festival and just like ending out business cards like crazy and not actually connecting with people and just trying to pitch over and over sometimes their projects without even asking, like without even actually engaging in a real conversation. And from my experience, it's been more about, you know, you can talk to two people that you make a really deep connection, and this is going to take you way further than trying to talk to 50 people that night. Most of the time, if you talk to one person and you really connect on a certain level, this is somebody that maybe you're going to collaborate with later. Maybe this person is going to bring on you on their project or vice versa. And this is also something that I think it's important to know. And also the fact that it's not necessarily going to happen today. Sometimes you meet someone this year and then it's 1 year or 2 years or 3 years later that the collaboration is going to happen, that things don't come like overnight. And it's all like a lot of the industry is about building those connections, because most people want to work with people that they trust and that, you know, that they have a connection with. So sometimes they don't have you don't have the opportunity to work on a project right now, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen later down the road. There's people I met 5 years ago and we're working together on something today, and we never worked, but I would see them all the times. And I think so it's a long time, quote unquote commitment, but that really helps. And then you have to constantly build that network. And, you know, sometimes once in a while I check in on people, and, you know, I love to run into people at different events that come back yearly, like festivals and stuff like that. But networking definitely, I feel, is the way to continuously get work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also want to touch on what Michael said about, not making it transactional. You definitely want it to be something like that's sincere. Like you want to network through sincerity. Like try to be friends with people. And like if somebody does you a good turn, you help them out. Like I've had, like how Josiane said, most of my last few positions have been because of people I've legitimately become friends with in the industry. I made a reputation as somebody who's reliable, and then when they knew of a position that came up, or they themselves had to turn down a position, they put my name forward, and that's something I've strived to do. I've had to turn down a few positions because this job has gone on longer than I thought it would, and like there are other people who are merging that I know that I met when I was moving up, and when that time came for me, like I suggested those people as well. So like definitely you want it to be something that's sincere, like get to know the person so that if they have to stake their name on you or you stake your name on them, you actually know them. Like you can be like, this person is a very reliable person. Like I've known them for a while. Like that's the kind of relationship you want to like move forward with networking.
Thank you. Thank you. And those are all completely like all accurate. And, I see it a lot that Josiane, what you were saying about kind of handing out meaningless cards and brief interactions, those aren't the ones that end up actually coming to any fruition for the most part. So thank you for that. So Keysha, we're gonna go to you. In the music industry, is there a better way for us to support our creatives and artists? What would you suggest are some things for up and comers to look out for?
Yeah, I do believe that there is always, ways to support artists. Actually, one of the ways that a lot of us artists have been discussing lately is like more mental health help in the arts and creative community. We channel so much different emotions and just feelings and stuff that we deal with, and real life stuff, and being artists who are performing. Some of us are touring, just kind of doing different things. Some of us hit droughts. We just go through a lot of different things in the span of a couple months sometimes. So more kind of support in the mental health kind of industry. More, I know like for actors and stuff, they have like ACTRA and stuff like that, but there's not really anything kind of like that for artists where there's support when you're not working, or you just kind of other things of that nature that that we could benefit from. When I was touring with the sorority right before the pandemic hit, we were touring for the whole year, like touring. Then the pandemic hits, and now we're like, oh my, like it. So just financial support, I think, is a really big thing as well. It's not really kind of an easy conversation to have, but a lot of us artists who put in a lot of work, time, we spend a lot of money putting out music. We don't always see the return. A lot of us don't. Majority of us don't in this country. So that's a big thing. That's a big thing. A big conversation amongst myself and my peers is the mental health support, but also the financial support and some sort of backing, some sort of union or something like that we can kind of rely on, and that can be there to help us and filter some of the stuff that we deal with.
Thank you for that, Keysha. So we're gonna jump to Tracey. So Tracey, what are some things that post-secondary students can do to prepare for work in media?
And some of the things I've heard, you mentioned, we both mentioned internships. So taking, full, like taking those opportunities, internships, any co-op programs that are attached to the different programs, volunteering. I know at Centennial, and Shane and Alicia, you would know this, but we have a lot of projects that we encourage students to get involved in. So buddying up with your peers, completing projects. One of the things I would also recommend too is the arts, and this as artists, right? It's a freelance community. So getting together with peers and looking at industries and trends, what's going on out there, what matters to you, and seeing if you can respond to, create projects or do different projects that actually lend some value, creative value to those growing industries. So, I think of our PR students, instead of just, blindly looking for PR jobs, look at those growth industries and see where you can apply those skills, those writing skills. So start with, the trends and the growth industries, but it goes back to those experiential learning opportunities that you can participate in. So internships, co-op, project-based work that you do as part of your classes. And in doing this, that's also an opportunity to expand your network, because often these projects are sponsored by industry leaders. So making the most of those experiences and using that as an opportunity to network and also build the resume.
Thank you. Yeah, I think back to, when I was in school, and it also sort of ties to the networking across aspect too, even just like your partners in those projects and the relationships you build within school can, turn out to be collaborators years down the line even. So thank you for that, Tracey. And Keysha, as a Black woman in music, what is your take on young Black women emerging in this industry?
There's a lot, and I'm really excited to see the growth and where everyone's kind of heading. As in the past, I would say maybe 10 years, there's just been such a boom of young Black women entering the music industry, not just as artists, but like in executive positions. When I look at some of the labels and some of my friends who are at like they're holding label positions, in Warner Music, you have, marketing and A&Rs, and they're Black women, young Black women, coming from actually different industries too. They weren't not everyone had a music background, but I like how the industry is kind of shaking up a little bit more and trusting in Black women to kind of lead the charge in a lot of different things. A lot of management positions are now Black women. So I think that's really great to see that shift happening. But even on the artist side, there's so many young there's a lot of young, like 17, 16-year-old Black women I'm seeing entering Honey Jam, which is obviously, we know they've been a leader in providing opportunity for young women in the music industry in Canada. Their output for artists has been excellent. So even just their peers of mine, like Havaya Mighty, when you look at Havaya's catalog and what Havaya's been doing, the first Black woman to win Polaris Prize, hip hop album to win a Polaris Prize, like that, though, that's history. It's like history is being made by Black women in this country, in the music industry. Savannah Ray with the Juno nominations, like it's every day. So I'm really excited and proud of everybody, and just to see the space that we weren't necessarily given, we're kind of taking. I'm really proud that we are stepping into these spaces and demanding, to hold space and staking our claim. I love it. The advice that I would give is, don't be afraid. You have support. Don't be afraid to reach out, get help, find mentorship. There's no kind of limit. Social media is the music industry, so don't be afraid. Don't worry. These entities can tell you no, but once you get that hit on TikTok, everyone knows it's like, no stopping from there. So that would be kind of my advice to a lot of these up and coming artists. Just stick the course.
Thank you for that, Keysha. I guess I have another question in terms of where people would start in the music industry. So what would you suggest for anyone who's actually looking to maybe work on the business side of things instead of actually being an artist? Like, who would you suggest they talk to?
It's funny because a lot of people can be reached on social media and they want to be reached, but first start off with coming to things like this, finding out where some of these people are speaking. A lot of these labels, let's say, for example, a record label, they have their directories online. So for me as an artist, I'm always like researching, okay, who's the A&R at this label, or who's the writer at, this magazine. Like my dad, he's a journalist for the Shared newspaper. His name is Ron. And even with him, like when doing research and stuff like that, it's about finding out who's the editor, who is this, who's that. And so people get his email by doing that. And he loves that. He encourages that. A lot of them have their social medias and stuff posted. LinkedIn, when you Google these companies, you can find on LinkedIn who works for Warner, who works for Universal, who works for Now Magazine, and you can directly email them. Like, these people are extremely reachable now. Like I said, social media we're in a state where everybody's at your fingertips. So just do the research, find out, where the best contact to go is, send out a professional email. There's no, yo, what's up? Like, send out a professionally done email that has your information, your music and all that stuff. Send that out and just follow up. Just like everybody, most people on the panel have mentioned today, it's not just about, I think it was Michael that mentioned, it's not just about, hey, how you doing? And that's it. Create a relationship, create a bond with some of these people, and they won't forget you. A lot of them always say, like, I wish people would kind of be more friendly with us. Like, we're humans, so create that human interaction with people, reach out to them on social media. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. The worst thing you can hear from someone is no. So just go ahead, go for it, submit that resume.
Thank you. And I think it's as simple as just having a conversation with someone, showing them that you're interested. That it really goes a long way. So I think it helps a lot. And Zaki, so you and I actually were PAs together. I just want you to, if you don't mind, speak a little bit about where to start in the film industry behind the scenes. What are your thoughts about people starting behind the scenes? Like, where should they start?
I mean, as entry level is usually production assistant. I mean, there isn't really one way of getting your foot in the door. Like, there are people who kind of just jump in through like unions and stuff like that, like entry level positions in different like unions, like whether it's costumes or anything. So there isn't just one way, but when I was starting, I kind of knew what I wanted to be my end goal. I wanted to write and I wanted to be a writer. So while I was doing these like production assistant roles, I was getting my scripts ready. I was sending them out to people. I was having people read them. And I ended up having some mentorships through that. Some of the people who read my scripts kept me in mind, and I would get some advice, some feedback from them. So yeah, I would say while the production assistant is a good ground floor into just understanding the industry as a whole, I wouldn't say it's the only route through. Like, for example, if you want to be a writer, there's other entry roles like story coordinating, which itself is a bit of a difficult role to get through. That's one of those ones that networking is extremely important. And I did the PA work for a couple of years before I became a story coordinator. And yeah, that was through networking, through letting people read my scripts. I know some showrunners who won't even hire that entry level position without having read their scripts, to make sure that, hey, if I ever want to hire this person as a writer in a year or two down the road, they do have those skills, and they're not just there to take notes. So it's definitely, finding entry level positions, but being prepared for more opportunities down the line.
Yeah, I think it's, sorry, go ahead, Alicia.
Sorry, no, I was just gonna say that sort of to your point, Zaki, and Keysha, you mentioned as well, like sometimes starting out in one area and you might end up in a different area of the industry ultimately. And I know, like, for myself, that was part of my path. Like, I started out thinking I wanted to do art direction and production design, and then now I'm more towards the business side of things. So I'm curious for if any of you have experience in that initial getting in. Did you see a different vision of your career goal? Maybe Josiane, did you have any experience? Like, did you always know you wanted to be a director producer?
Yes and no. I think it was a long long discovery of stuff before I got there. But I think that initially I wanted to do I started in the documentary world, and though I'm still in that world a little bit, I'm kind of pivot, I don't know how to say that word in English. I'm kind of changing more towards scripted and fiction and TV. So I always thought, because I had a journalism background, that I would be more in the documentary world, though recently I've kind of been focused more on the directing and writing on the TV scripted world. So I guess that's kind of what I would say in terms of change. But yeah, the producer part kind of just happened in the sense that I wanted to get my own project produce, and I just decided to learn how to produce in order to move faster through the industry. So
Thanks. And
And
Michael,
yeah,
sorry, Shane.
I was just gonna ask Michael. Michael, like I'm really interested in hearing from you about people starting out in photography. Like, so for film, you start out as a production assistant, and Keysha mentioned that you should be reaching out to people online and whatnot. So for photographers, where should they be starting, or how should they be starting?
Right. This is the one question that I get asked the most, and my answer is always very, very simple, at least from my own experience, is to find a mentor in the field that you're trying to get into, and just have that guidance, because yes, you can do it on your own. I did it on my own, but it wasn't until I found a mentor that I, like they always say, I went from 0 to 100, because someone who's done it, for a long time. And yes, if you do it on your own, you're basically just cutting down that years of all those mistakes, right? So my number one advice would be to find a mentor in your field, or in photography that you're trying to get into. You can find them in so many ways. There's Instagram. You should know the top people in your field, right? Those guys that are like the best of the best, right? And I don't remember who said it, but the worst thing you can hear, I think it was Keysha, that is no, right? So reach out to people, and there's always, like, it's for the top guys in every field. They're always having this mentorship program for like people that would want to get into whatever it is that they're doing, and they're always willing to help. So that would be my number one. My second advice would obviously, like you've said so many times today, is to network, right? And networking, like I said earlier, is not about giving out a business card or always trying to find a way to gain something. You always have to think about it from the point of how much value, how can I add value into this person, right? And don't worry about what you get in return. It would always come if it comes, right? But always think about how you can, provide value to someone else, right? Even the same way of mentorship that we're talking about. So many DMs asking, hey, can you teach me how to do this? Can you teach me how to do this? That sometimes, we get busy. It can be selfish when you're saying, oh, can you teach me this? Can you teach me this? But if you can approach it in a way of value can I give to this person, or, how can I help this person? It's always a better way to approach that. So network, finding a mentor, advice, and then obviously again networking, right? And then I think I would add the fact that, like I said before, you always have to try to be the best at what you do, right? Because at some point your work would have to speak for you in body that would connect you to someone, right? So your work can speak for you, which right. So I think that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, mentorship is invaluable sometimes, and the network that alone can bring, and the experience. And yeah, thank you for that advice. And Tracey, what are some things that Black creatives should be doing when it comes to their resumes in the initial application stage?
Yeah, I think, well, before I even comment on resumes, I really like what I've been hearing about networking. And just to go back to that, it's that mindset and attitude. Give more to the world than you take, right? And so approaching networking from that, with that attitude and mindset, I think goes a long way. As far as resumes, I don't think there's one, years in the career field, I don't think there's one way to do a resume, right? There, and especially when it comes to, the creative arts, making sure that, your digital portfolios, to the digital portfolios, your social media sites, those, the graphics that are, I've seen resumes that, there are a number of graphics. So the resume really has to express who you are authentically and what you can contribute. My advice to any student, doing their resume, because, you know, we have sample resumes on our website, for example, and they're just samples, they're just that, is to take that resume out to the field, take that resume out to people in the field and use that as a networking opportunity as well. Get advice, get guidance around the resume, feedback on the resume. So craft a resume and get out there and get some feedback. There are some things that are standard, and I think Keysha mentioned this. Language needs to be clear, needs to be professional. Get somebody to proofread the resume for you so there are, you know, no grammatical errors. Those are some of the standard things, but ultimately the resume has to speak to what the industry needs. It has to be a good representation of you and what you have to contribute. And it's an opportunity, as again, to connect.
Thank you, Tracey. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I mean, it's tough to know exactly what the right answer is for what a resume should look like. It is a very individual, you know, aspect of the application process. But I appreciate your advice in that. And I guess circling back to you, Michael, are there barriers that you've noticed for accessing clients or resources as independent Black photographers? I know the photography industry can sometimes be, you know, compared to like music and film, photography can be very independent, you know? So I'm curious what your experience with resources and building your client base looks like.
Right. For me specifically, I think I've been really, really fortunate enough to have worked with a lot of great people that that have, you know, been great to me as well, and referred my business to other people's. I think, again, like I said before, sometimes it's not about what you do, right? So I'm doing my best to be like the best I can be in what I'm doing. But at the same time, on the other side, the person on the other side has to decide, right? If they want to give you the opportunities, right? And I remember there was one of the weird inquiries that I got recently. The person, you know, said, "Are you discriminate against non-Black people because they don't see non?" I told the person that, you know, listen, you have to give us the chance, right, to work with you guys, right? And if you reach out to us and you want to work with us, yes, we will work with you. It's the people that are giving us that opportunities to work with them that we are able to showcase, right? You know what I mean? So, but from my own point of view, the best to do to be the best networking and just doing the best work possible. In barriers, I haven't, again, fortunate that I haven't really had any struggles, to be honest. So I wouldn't want to speak on what I haven't really experienced, and that that I've been able to get from the beginning, and obviously the kind of work and connection that I've managed to build in the industry. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, and that's really helpful. And, you know, I'm happy to hear that you haven't had to experience too many struggles. That's always a positive thing to hear. And Tracey, I guess we sort of discussed it earlier, but I'm just curious if, from a career services perspective, if there's any specific resources that you would recommend for young Black creatives to look into in this early stage of their career.
I think those early connections with career centers on the different campuses are important. You know, begin with the, you know, they say start with the end in mind. So career planning first semester, don't wait until graduation. You know, we talked about those projects and experiential learning opportunities that students access. I'd also think one of the resources, and some of it has been mentioned, is those professional associations that are linked to the different industries, you know, making those connections and using those as an opportunity to meet new people and, network. And also drawing on alumni, connect with, alumni, former students working in the field. Those are often good connections to learning. You can learn about their different experiences, the paths, and so also, another good way to network. So alumni, we have tons of resources on our platform at Centennial College, and I'm sure we're not unique. I know, Zaki, I think you mentioned Ryerson. Many of the schools have very active career centers with tons of resources. The challenge is that, students tend to access them too late in the journey. So encouraging people to access those resources and make full use of those opportunities, those skill building opportunities that are available to students on campus.
Thank you, Tracey. And I guess just a general question for everyone. How can people get noticed in a field that is saturated? Because I feel like some of our fields are a little bit saturated. So how can people stand out from the crowd?
I know in media, it's just about, like everyone's kind of said here, we've touched on it a lot, but it's just about making connections and just making sure that you offer something, you bring something to the table. A lot of people, like Tracey had mentioned, it's easy to take, but offer more than you take. Make sure that your content, if it's music, if it's writing scripts, whatever it is, just make sure that it's unique and it speaks to your experience and the experience of your community. I think people gravitate towards obviously things they can relate to, so make it relatable, but also put you on it. Like I always tell people, when it comes to music, put you on it. Put a little bit of your scent, your swag, your style. People like authenticity, so be authentic. Provide them with an experience, not just a product in their face. Give them a whole experience. People like exclusiveness. People like to feel like they're getting an experience with things these days. So give people an opportunity to be part of an experience. Again, not just purchasing a product or downloading a song. So that's my advice.
I'll add to what Keysha just said. As a photographer, a lot of times I find that I hope there's someone who's trying to be a photographer here, so it speaks to them, but it's more than just a product or a service, right? If you don't have the experience aspect to what you're doing, then you're just like everyone else, right? From my own perspective, I don't book anybody without speaking to them first, right? So, and just connect with them. So it's not like they're just showing up in front of my camera and then they're just in front of a stranger, right? So, and I find that by the time I speak to them before we even shoot, we're kind of like, there's no situation where they feel awkward in front of the camera. Even from speaking to them before I book them, I kind of have something to talk about from just having questions for them and just hearing what they're saying and just listening to what they're saying. So, and that from the point I started doing that has kind of improved the experience that I provide to the people that I work with. So it's much more than just you doing something or like selling a product or a service, right? And like Keysha said, you have to make it like an experience and introduce yourself. There can be two of myself, right? There's always something specific about each and every person, and that could be the difference between someone picking you over someone else, right? So yeah.
And Josiane, I'm curious from a film perspective, when you have your first project, having that stand out and get like the discoverability aspect within like film and television can be difficult. I'm curious what your experience in getting your projects noticed has been.
Yeah, well, I think that it's a lot of like discoverability is a lot of work. I think that building the connections with people, and also I think as Keysha will mention, I think that there's something about having your crowd around you helps a lot about putting your project out there. I think that when I have a new project that comes out, there's like especially in film, which is a very collaborative environment. So I always see that my project is not only my project, it's everybody else's project too. Like, you know, it's my idea, but then when I work, I want to make sure that the project become everybody else's project. So when the project comes out, everybody's excited to share and everybody's excited to talk about because they really feel that they contributed. So I work in really collaborative environment, but not only that, is that from what we just piggyback on what we were talking earlier about networks and connections. And, you know, I meet so many people and and I'm there for them as well. And I cheer for them when their projects are coming out. And when my own projects are coming out, they're as excited for me that I am excited for myself, right? And those people are the one who shares it. Those people are the one who are there to share the post, to talk about it with people they know. So I think that helps a lot to get the word out as well. Of course, publicity and all these things are part of the deal, but I think that, you know, when you create a group of people or a fan base on your projects that are really there to cheer for you, this takes everything way further, right? So I think for me, that's been the experience, just having a network of people who really believe in what I'm trying to do or what we are trying to do in production and just passing the word. Yeah.
Thank you, Josiane. So I guess we'll open the floor to Q&A. I see one in the chat, and if anyone else has any further questions, please feel free to post questions in the chat. So the first one that we see here from Jacqueline, do you have any advice for journalism students for entry-level jobs and getting their foot in the door? I know that today, unfortunately, we don't have a journalist specifically on the panel, unless if I'm mistaken. Do any of you have experience in journalism?
I actually do. You know, in the middle of my music career, I decided to branch off into journalism because I said my dad, his name's Ron, he writes for the Share newspaper, and obviously growing up, I loved writing. So I actually was writing for the Caribbean Camera for a while, and that was actually as a co-op. I was doing a co-op with them, but they were so accepting, and obviously when I showed them my resume, and then I think they also just thought it was cool that my dad was their competitor, so they had me on their side. But it kind of just writing for them, and just showing my examples of my writing skills. Within maybe 2 months, I was interviewing like Ziggy Marley and, you know, people of that's like already like right off the bat. This was when G98 had just became a station. So I was interviewing Fitzroy at the time. So just going to these companies, just letting them know what you're interested in. They might, you know, have you there on a trial period, just kind of see how it works. But a lot of them are very inviting. So again, like I said, find a contact for them. They're on LinkedIn. And don't just, I know sometimes people jump out of journalism school and they just want to go straight to the Toronto Star and stuff, but like, don't be afraid to start at some of the local levels, your local papers, you know, wherever you're from, and build up your resume so that you can go to the bigger platforms and say here. But also there's a lot of online publications that you can, you know, pitch to. A lot of them love pitches. So again, find who to contact, find the editor, their emails are in their bios these days, and just pitch yourself. That's the best advice that I can give to journalism students, but don't be afraid to take those co-ops as well.
Thank you, Keysha. And we have another question here. Are there any positions in film or TV that are part-time? I have a disability and cannot work full-time hours.
I guess I'm not sure about that. I guess I would say more maybe in offices. Sometimes it's possible to have part-time positions, but I'm not so sure about how much part-time position there are available. I don't know if Zaki has something to say about that.
Yeah, I was going to suggest something similar. Usually on production, the hours run very long, like anywhere from 12 plus hours. So like the back office or even like network positions, like production offices, usually those are the ones that you'll probably find the less hours. But if it involves set work, unfortunately, 12 hours is pretty common.
something that just comes to mind for me is kind of, because there's different stages in film and TV. There's development, there's production, there's post-production, and there's different roles across those different stages. And so maybe you may be better suited focusing on like development stage, or maybe you know, work as a researcher part-time, or even like I do business affairs. I do that full-time, but if you were interested in that kind of thing, like, you know, that could be part-time if you're kind of doing a single project or two. It may be focusing on, if you find a role and then do it on a freelance basis, so that you're not tied to, you know, the exact production hours. You're doing your research, your business affairs, etc., or maybe even like development, like a development coordinator or something like that. Finding content in that way. If you do that as a freelance aspect, then there might be a bit more flexibility in your hours.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. If anybody else wants to ask a question, now would be the time. Let's give them a couple seconds. And do any of you have any questions for each other? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's our time. We've hit 5 o'clock now. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for coming to this event. We really do appreciate it. I'm happy to have you guys here, and we'll definitely stay in touch with you guys for some of our future projects as well. Alicia, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you said, we're so grateful for all of you taking your time and sharing your expertise and experience with our community. It means a lot. And I hope that, you know, those who were able to attend, I hope you were able to take something from this. And, you know, always feel free to reach out to us at through our email address. It's linked in the Zoom registration, where, you know, an open community resource. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time.
Yeah, and you guys can also join our Facebook group. That's where we're most active. That and our Instagram page. If you guys haven't seen it, it's at Toronto Black Media. We're also on Twitter, and we have an email address. You can reach out to us to torontoblackmedia@gmail.com. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you again soon.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Enjoy the rest of the
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.